आपका आज की वीडियो में। आज जो वीडियो हम लेकर आए उसका टाइटल है इंडियाज SpaceX moment, how to ex-ISRO scientists found $1 billion gap in Elon's empire। तो चलिए जानते हैं इस वीडियो में, लेकिन इससे पहले
इस वीडियो चैनल का लिंक आपको हमारी वीडियो के डिस्क्रिप्शन मिल जाएगा। सब्सक्राइब के, लाइक के, शेयर को फॉलो करें इनके चैनल को। उसके अलावा मैं ब्लॉग चैनल का लिंक भी हमारी वीडियो के डिस्क्रिप्शन मिल जाएगा। सब्सक्राइब के, लाइक के, शेयर को फॉलो करें।
चलिए देख लेते हैं ये वीडियो।
5 4 3 2 1 0 +1 2 3 lift off।
Really? Should they really be spending this sort of money on a space program? Because a country that has extreme poverty, I think more than 700 million Indians don't have access to a toilet.
Ladies and gentlemen, India is about to make history. You know, for decades, the West has mocked us for our ambitions.
We should not be giving money to countries with a space program as a rule.
And this mocking has been so cheap that the day we launched our rocket to Mars, the New York Times published this. They drew us as a poor Indian farmer knocking on the door of the elite space club. And inside the club, there are two gentlemen sneering over the morning paper which says India's Mars mission. And the sad part is, the day that cartoon was drawn, India had reached Mars on its very first attempt, which is something that US, Russia and Europe all had failed to do.
India became the first in the world to successfully reach Mars's orbit on its first attempt.
I was shocked the other day to read that the nation of India, on one rocket launched, deposited more than 100 satellites in space.
And we did it at a record 450 crore budget, which is less than what Hollywood spent on making a movie about going to space. But now, an Indian company is going head-on against SpaceX, and it's already $1 billion company. This company goes by the name Skyroot.
Skyroot, a pioneering company which launched India's first rocket into space from the private space.
And we have liftoff. विक्रम 1 ने अपनी उड़ान भरी, प्रक्षेपण पथ को लांघकर आकाश को भेदने का निर्णय ले लिया है एक ब्रह्मास्त्र की तरह।
Now the skeptics will look at this and say, bro, Skyroot is nowhere close to SpaceX. While SpaceX launch cost per payload is $5,000 to $7,000 per kg, for Skyroot it's 3 times higher at $15,000 to $20,000 per kg. So when Skyroot is 3 times costlier than SpaceX, then how do they plan to beat a $1 trillion company like SpaceX? How are they different from ISRO? And why is it so special for India?
नहीं, बाकी भी किसी मूवी का।
Well, before we understand the story of Skyroot, you need to understand a dark truth about India's space mission. You know, while every Indian was celebrating Mangalyaan reaching Mars, while every Indian was celebrating Chandrayaan landing on the moon, every headline screamed that India had arrived in space. But the truth was the complete opposite. India was not winning the space race at all. In fact, we were losing the race. You know why? Look at this chart. From 2010 to 2022, the number of payloads and rocket bodies launched in low Earth orbit doubled from less than 4,000 to more than 8,000 bodies. And these were not government satellites. They were private satellites being launched by private companies like SpaceX and Rocket Lab. So the global space economy exploded from $270 billion in 2010 to above $400 billion in 2019. Private investment into US space startups grew by nearly 4 times. And America alone captured almost 50% of the global space market. And the rest 50% was captured by Europe, China, Japan, Israel, Russia and New Zealand. And you know where India was? India was at zero. We had 0 private rocket launches and 0 private space companies. And the worst part is, this was not because Indians lacked the talent or technology. SpaceX engineering floor has Indians today. ISRO is breaking records every single year.
From 2017 to till today, whatever launches done by LVM-3 rocket is 100% success.
Then the question is, why were we losing? Well, that was because of one stupid little thing: government permission. As it turns out, until 2020, under Indian law, A private company building a rocket or anything for space was effectively illegal. Therefore, ISRO had a legal monopoly. So do you realize an Indian engineer who could have built the next SpaceX had only one option: pack his bags, fly to California, and build it for Elon Musk instead of his own motherland. So while India sent rovers to Mars, America built a private space industry on the back of Indian engineers who then eventually went on to build a $1 trillion company. While we celebrated Chandrayaan, the actual money, the actual jobs and the actual future was leaving our country every single day. This is what nobody told you while we were celebrating here in India. But in 2018, two ex-ISRO scientists looked at this mess and they did something that no sane Indian entrepreneur would ever do. They started a rocket company in India when it was illegal to launch rockets. Meet Pawan and Bharat.
10 years ago, none of us would have imagined a private company building a rocket, taking it to the launch pad very close to the launch. And this historic moment is happening as we speak. Skyroot's Vikram 1 is ready to take off soon from Indian soil.
With no policy, no funding, no roadmap and no permission, they had the dream to build India's first space startup. Now do you realize they had no money, no connections and no investors? In fact, no investor would fund a company that is illegal to operate in a country. Then the question is, how did they build a $1 billion company? Well, as they say, visionaries spot visionaries before the world calls them a visionary. While these two boys were Googling how to raise funding, how to pitch to investors, they sent a lot of cold DMs on LinkedIn. And out of nowhere, Mukesh Bansal, the founder of Myntra and CureFit, gave them a check of 10 crore rupees. But the question is, why did Mukesh Bansal give them 10 crores and how did these boys turn this 10 crore check into a $1 billion venture? Well, as it turns out, these boys spotted two big gaps in the market. Number one, they saw that ISRO is a government agency, so they would always prioritize national projects over commercial payloads, because of which they are running on a multi-year backlog where booking a slot today delays your launch until 2027 or 2028. And here's where a lot of companies would ask, well, so what? These companies could still go to SpaceX, right? Well, SpaceX also has a problem, and this is where the second gap comes in. Look at this. Earth has 3 orbits: low Earth orbit, medium Earth orbit, and geostationary Earth orbit. Now, if you see this low Earth orbit, it is not one address. It stretches from 200 kilometers above Earth all the way to 2000 kilometers. And SpaceX does not care where your satellite wants to go. SpaceX operates like a train. Every satellite gets dropped at the same fixed station at the same fixed angles. So they would drop you at an altitude of 525 kilometers or 600 kilometers, and that too at a fixed angle of either 98 degrees or 45 degrees to Earth. But if your company needs to reach 1000 kilometers altitude at an 80-degree inclination, SpaceX cannot do that for you. You will have to then align your objects by yourself using your own fuel. And the best example of the same is an Earth observation satellite. If you look at an imaging satellite, its fundamental job is to photograph the same place on Earth day after day and compare the pictures. This comparison helps them understand whether the forest is shrinking, whether the enemy is building something on their territory, or did the flood spread. And for that comparison to mean anything, every photo must be shot in the same light. So a photo at 10:30 AM light versus the same photo at 4 PM light will have different shadows. So the only way to guarantee same light every day is a sun synchronous orbit. Now the challenge is, to be sun synchronous, the inclination must fall in a razor thin window of about 97.9 degrees to 100.5 degrees, and that too precisely tuned to the altitude. So at 800 kilometers altitude, the required inclination is 98.7 degrees. Not 95, not 100, but precisely 98.7 degrees. So when SpaceX train drops your satellite at a station, it becomes difficult to achieve this. This is the reason why Skyroot said, instead of being a train of space, let us build Uber for space. So while SpaceX drops satellites at common points, Skyroot drops every satellite at its exact orbit, exact altitude, and exact inclination. This leads to minimal fuel waste and minimal mission life lost. In fact, if you go to Skyroot's website right now, you can literally book a rocket like ordering a cab on Uber. This is the reason why Vikram 1 is very, very special. But this leaves one critical question unanswered. Just a few minutes ago, I told you that launching a private rocket in India was illegal. So how did Skyroot become $1 billion company, and how exactly are they launching their rocket? Well, in June 2020, Modi's government did something no Indian Prime Minister had done in 70 long years. They took the space monopoly out of ISRO's hands and handed it to the Indian entrepreneurs.
मेरे नौजवान इस तरफ ध्यान दें, हमने स्पेस सेक्टर में बहुत रिफॉर्म किए हैं। जिन बंधनों में हमने स्पेस सेक्टर को बांध के रखा था, उसे हमने खोल दिया है।
Government has decided to implement reform measures to leverage the achievements of ISRO through opening up the space sector for private enterprises.
And this is when Skyroot started to have the first mover advantage. And then the money started coming. In 2021, they raised $15 million, then $50 million in 2022, and they kept on raising to have enough cash, enough tech, and enough talent to build the first private rocket for India. Today, Skyroot is so competitively placed that Skyroot is offering an Uber to space at just $5 to $10 million per launch, which is 50% cheaper than competitors. So the question is, how exactly is Skyroot able to build rockets at 50% the cost, and is it just labor arbitrage because of being in India? Well, this is where there's another plot twist. You see, building your own rocket test facilities and launch pad, it costs between $100 to $200 million. Every American rocket company had to build this from scratch, but Skyroot built none of it. You know why? Because the government of India now allows private rocket companies to use ISRO's facilities either for free or at heavily subsidized rates. I repeat, the government of India is giving away $200 million worth of infrastructure either for free or at heavily subsidized rates. So the same government that made it illegal to launch a rocket is now helping Skyroot thrive. On top of that, Skyroot 3D prints its rocket engines and structural components, which cuts another 50 to 60% cost, and Indian engineering talent costs a fraction of American engineering talent. And with the crazy infrastructure and booming market, Skyroot is now on track to make history. This is how two engineers with one visionary investor used $1 million to build an Uber to space. And this wonderful story has three very, very important lessons to teach us. Number one, look at this. Between 2019 and 2023, the number of Indian space startups went from less than 10 to over 140. And India's space economy is projected to hit $77 billion by the end of this decade. So if you're looking for opportunities, look for opportunities in two buckets, the upstream and the downstream bucket. Upstream is where you build rockets, manufacture satellites, set up ground stations, propulsion systems, and in-space solutions. The downstream side is where you can do Earth observation for amazing applications like predicting crop yields for Indian farmers, tracking deforestation, monitoring highways and ports, and even predicting cyclones before they hit our coast. Each one of these verticals is $1 billion market, and the best thing is that the Indian government has set up a 1,000 crore venture capital fund specially for space startups, and 50 to 100% FDI is also now allowed in the Indian space sector, that too with tax exemptions. So if you're an entrepreneur watching this, I've attached a document in the description with all the schemes, subsidy, and application link. Lesson number 2, the government is the godfather of the market. So if you help the godfather achieve his dream, he will make you a millionaire. Now, whether that is the IT industry that made billions after the 1991 liberalization, or the pharma industry that made billions due to patent laws, it all comes down to the boring government policy. So always keep an eye on the government policy, because that carries the word of the godfather. And lastly, as Vikram Sarabhai once said,
in my opinion, the aspect of space research which I would like to stress most is in relation to the national capability, the self-confidence that this will generate. And if I were to give my own evaluation of this, I think the benefits of these far outweigh all the rest that we have been talking about.
That's all from my side for today, guys. If you learned something valuable from this case study, please hit the like button to support our work. And for more such insightful business and political case studies, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.
भाई यहाँ से ना एक चीज़ वो क्लियर होती है कि गवर्नमेंट की पॉलिसीज़ जो है ना वो बिज़नेस फ्रेंडली बनना शुरू हो जाएं, इस तरह की पॉलिसीज़ जो है वो इंट्रोड्यूस करें कि भाई वो आने वाले टाइम में जो है ना बहुत ज़्यादा बेनिफिट्स दें, तो आप कुछ भी जो है वो कर सकते हैं। अभी मुझे सबसे अच्छी चीज़ ये लगी कि भाई आप जो है ना खाली ये नहीं कि आप सिर्फ आपको लाइसेंस मिल गया है, आप लीगल हो गए हैं, आप बना लें, नहीं, उसके साथ साथ आप अगर इसरो की फैसिलिटीज़ भी यूज़ करना चाह रहे हैं तो गवर्नमेंट आपको वो भी जो है एक अपॉर्चुनिटी जो है वो दे रही है। तो लगता है फिर लोग स्टार्टअप ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा करते हैं।
बिल्कुल, सबसे पहले तो कॉन्ग्रेचुलेशंस, क्योंकि ये छोटी चीज़ नहीं है। और दूसरा मैं ये पूछना चाहूँगी कि लाइक जब गवर्नमेंट अपनी पॉलिसीज़ को फ्लेक्सिबल करती है, ठीक है ना, तो जो हम लोगों ने देखा और ऑब्जर्व किया कि उसमें काफ़ी आप कह लो कि इकोनॉमी फ्लरिश होती है, नए लोग आते हैं और इन्वेस्ट करते हैं, बिजनेस स्टार्ट होते हैं। तो गवर्नमेंट अपनी पॉलिसीज पहले क्यों नहीं लिबरलाइज करती? मुझे ये चीज़ समझ नहीं आती कि
सही बात है,
इतना टाइम क्यों लग जाता है हमारे जैसे कंट्रीज़ में, इनको इतना बाउंड करके रखा जाता है। क्योंकि जैसे ही चीज़ें मतलब आप लोगों के लिए प्रोवाइड करते हो, फ्लेक्सिबल होते हो, आपका वही टैलेंट जो बाहर जा रहा होता है वो अपने कंट्री में रहकर काम कर रहा होता है। सो एक तो ये इस प्लीज़ क्वेश्चन का आंसर ज़रूर दीजिएगा। और दूसरा मैं ये कहूँगी कि वाकई में आपका जो विज़न है वो लाइफ में बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट होता है कि आप लाइफ में करना क्या चाहते हो, और उसके लिए जब आप रिस्क लेते हो और रास्ते बनाते हो तो रास्ते खुद ब खुद फिर जो है वो आपके लिए बनना शुरू हो जाते हैं जब आप एफर्ट करते हो। क्योंकि जैसे उनका स्टार्टिंग का दिखाया कि उस टाइम पर इलीगल था, गवर्नमेंट अलाउ नहीं करती थी, फिर उसके बाद जैसे भी उन्होंने अपनी एफर्ट की और काम किया, क्योंकि अगर आज ये चीज़ हो रही है तो ऑब्वियसली उन्होंने बहुत देर पहले ये चीज़ स्टार्ट की होगी, इस पर काम करना शुरू किया होगा। सो मैं कहूँगी कि वाकई में एक काबिल तारीफ़ काम है। और गवर्नमेंट ने भी जिस तरीके से अपने इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर जो है वो प्रोवाइड करने की ऑफ़र की है वो भी एक बहुत बड़ी बात है। इसका मतलब है गवर्नमेंट बहुत सीरियस है कि इस बिज़नेस को और ज़्यादा फ्लरिश किया जाए और ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा इसको कैप्चर किया जाए। क्योंकि अगर हम लोग इंडिया के स्पेस मिशंस की बात करें तो वो हमेशा से काफ़ी आप कह लो कि दूसरे कंट्रीज़ के कंपैरिजन में उसके जो रेट्स हैं या जो उसकी कॉस्ट है, जो सर्विसेज हैं वो चीप हैं। तो मुझे लगता है कि वो नए जो क्लाइंट्स हैं उनके लिए बहुत ज़्यादा
50/50 भी एक कट इशू यानी कि हो जाए तो काफ़ी ज़्यादा जो जिन्होंने लॉन्च करवाने होते हैं अपने सैटेलाइट्स उनके लिए बहुत फ़ायदा है। अगर एक जगह से आपको 100 रुपया पड़ रहा है, दूसरे से 50 रुपये आपको देकर काम हो रहा है, तो आप 50 वाले के पास ही जाएंगे।
ट्रू। बाकी कमेंट सेक्शन में आप ज़रूर बताइए कि आपकी क्या ओपिनियन है इस मुद्दे के बारे में। मिलेंगे नेक्स्ट टाइम। सब्सक्राइब करना।
गुड बाय।